Hey, Cody.
Hello.
So I think there's a handful of people who don't know each other here and maybe are new to Next San Diego. I'm going to suggest we do some quick introductions and yeah, I think Michelle knows a little bit. Robert, I don't know if you know anything about Next San Diego. So basically, we're a community for regenerative entrepreneurs. And what that means is we care not only about the planet and sustainability, but we also care about creating more wealth, like just in general, not just money, but of like people, taking care of your employees, your community, your customers, and all that stuff. And just it's all interconnected, right? And just like I don't know, the hippy dippy stuff. But there is a real like business aspect to it and a real, it's very tangible and it will make your business more resilient and all that stuff. And so I don't want to take up too much space. This is for Cody today, and Cody's one of our community members. It's open to anyone to join. We're always looking for more people. We're at 71 today, I think, since launching in July with 9 community partners. Just super exciting. These workshops are something that really came out in terms of like just helping entrepreneurs with their projects and whatever that looks like, especially, COVID or not, it's just difficult to get these kind of things off the ground. So yeah, maybe we'll do some quick intros if you guys want to take turns, and then I'll have Cody go last and we'll go into the project. So maybe Robert, do you want to introduce yourself first?
Sure, I'd be happy to. My name is Robert Halvorsen. I'm a mechanical engineer at Goddard Technologies. I, in particular, am very passionate about the intersection of conservation, sustainability, and technology. So when I heard about this organization, I was really excited. And while Goddard does not specifically specialize in sustainable products, we are experts on across a wide range of product categories, including medical and consumer. And hopefully, we will be able to sink more heavily into the sustainable technology front.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us. And how did you find out about this event?
Kate,
Oh,
she
cool.
said, "You like what this event is doing. Here you go." And I said, "Yes, I do. Thank you."
Perfect. Michelle, would you like to go next?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Michelle. I am a financial planner, and I specialize working with a woman in STEM space. But I have a physics educational background, and I'm always interested in learning more about how the the impact of new technology on our finances and our life and into society in general, and how to distribute the wealth, right, financial wealth as well as some other resources, like more equitably to people. Like nowadays, it's like very concentrated, like to small percentage of people. But that's like what I really interested in, and I saw what Cody was doing via website just briefly, but I saw like the picture of a Venus project, and I really wanted to find more about what Cody is doing, and I'm really interested in learning more about it. Thanks.
Nice. Yeah, Michelle and I are also in another group, so thanks for coming, Michelle. Um, and Hung, how about you?
Hello, everyone. My name is Hung. I'm a recent graduate from UCSD. I graduated in June of 2020. My major is speculative design. My minor is entrepreneurship. Just think about it as design, planning, and business. I heard about Next San Diego due to a Slack channel called the San Diego Startup Community, talking about there's a community that focuses on regenerative practice, circular economy, all the necessary push to push ourselves beyond sustainability, because sustainability just mean cost neutral in a sense, zero impact. And I want to hopefully find a career I can do more in.
Thanks, Hung. Brandon?
Turn my video on so you can see me while I'm talking to you. Yeah, I'm Branden Wolner. I am a science scientist. I'm an industrial microbiologist. I've been working in the industry for a very long time. I've spent a lot of my time working in renewables and things like biofuels and methane bioconversion, waste to energy. So I've been in this industry for a long time. And even as a kid, I was a volunteer when I was in high school at a nature conservancy in New York. And so I'm just, I try and get involved in any kind of sustainability and renewability efforts. Isabel and I work together on the SDEE Sustainability Committee. And I was just recently asked to join the board of directors of Tree San Diego. So that's my newest thing. I think Electra was supposed to be on this call, wasn't she? No?
She pops in from
Anyway,
time to time.
if you don't know Tree San Diego, so Tree San Diego is an organization that tries to plant regionally appropriate trees. So that's it. That's me. Nice to meet you all.
Yeah, congrats on that, Branden. And we have another person on the phone. I'm not sure. Is that John Paul Perez, maybe? Well, it's fine if you want to listen in, or I don't know if you're. I'm going to try to unmute. But anyway, so we'll get going. So maybe Cody, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Sorry, I can't turn on my video. I'm having Wi-Fi issues, and so I'm connected via my phone hotspot. So hopefully audio will at least work, but let me know if I start breaking up. How's it coming through so far?
It sounds good.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so first off, just want to thank Isabel and Next San Diego for given me this opportunity to chat with you about what we're up to. So let's see, my educational background, I have a Bachelor of Arts from Duke University in Environmental Science and Policy with a focus on the methods and motivations of sustainable development. And while I was in school, I started an LLC. I was interested in entrepreneurship, and Duke didn't have very many classes at the time. And I'm more of a learn by doing person anyway. So I was getting really interested in sustainability and talking with some companies that I thought had interesting technologies, and had a conversation with a law student. He was like, yeah, if you really want to pursue this, it wouldn't be a terrible idea to start an LLC to protect yourself a little bit. So yeah, I just went ahead and did that, and figured it was gonna, probably not turn into anything, and it would just be a good story for when I started applying for jobs after graduating. And one of the companies that I was chatting with during that time ended up offering to hire me through the LLC as a contractor after I graduated. And so I said, yeah, sure, why not? And for the last 10 years, pretty much every gig that I've worked on has been able to hire me through the company. So it's really just been a legal entity to work through. Most of that work has been project management for environmental and social impact initiatives, helping other organizations execute something, an idea that they already had. When I first started, I thought there would be more consulting, that I would, that companies might not know what they should prioritize or go after, and that I could come in and kind of look at the operations and make some recommendations and then help them implement them. And it's turned out that the first half of that has just not happened at all. I think largely due to my poor marketing skills. I think those opportunities are out there. I just haven't found them. But have found a fair amount of opportunities to help execute initiatives that organizations already had planned. So I actually finished up in March about a 3-year contract with Tree San Diego, managing an urban wood salvage grant for them. Have worked in wastewater to energy, regenerative agriculture, sustainable housing, a fair amount of different kind of subsectors within the overall environmental space. But the environmental and social impact that we've been able to have has been really negligible. And that was the entire point of doing this. So, 10 years, and we've basically accomplished next to nothing from my perspective. And so that that really bothers me. And so for a long time, it's one of the big questions has been how to change that. And so and there's a lot of urgency in my mind for doing this, both due to the environmental degradation that we're seeing, and not just climate change, but biodiversity loss is from my perspective a far more severe crisis at the moment than climate change. Disruptions to the nitrogen and phosphorus cycles, land system change, there's a lot of other issues, and then that's not even to mention the social crises, malnutrition and disease, lack of clean water and sanitation, just on and on. And so, and then not only those problems, but then we have this huge opportunity, I think, with some of the technologies that we're seeing being developed right now. I think we're in the early stages of another industrial revolution. Some people say it's the third, some people say it's the fourth. I don't think that particularly matters, but I'm drawing a lot of the ideas around this from a guy named Jeremy Rifkin. He calls it the third industrial revolution, the first being coal, the second being petroleum, the third being renewables, because it all starts with energy. And so he says that this revolution started with the digital revolution in let's say the 2000s, and at that point we saw the marginal cost for some important digital goods and services go to near zero, where once you have paid the upfront cost of a computer, which were and still are relatively expensive, but once you had that infrastructure, you could produce all this digital content, from music to magazine articles, books, etc., and then copy those digital goods for fractions of a penny, just the cost of electricity basically. And so the marginal cost of each additional copy of a song is near zero marginal cost. And so the idea was that would not transfer into the physical world, right? We saw the disruption that caused the movie industry, music industry, print media, et cetera, but that it would not, that we would not see near zero marginal cost for physical goods and services. But Mr. Rifkin says that we are going to see that in transportation, from autonomous vehicles and drones. And then I think you could even, I've never heard him say this, but I think you could extend that to virtual reality as well. As that improves, we'll have an ability to quasi travel places digitally with it, feeling something like the real thing for very low cost. And then from energy, from distributed renewables, and manufacturing, from robotics, 3D printing, other forms of advanced manufacturing, and personal manufacturing. And so based on past industrial revolutions, the trend is that the gains from this will go to the top 1% or even 0.1%, and the rest of us will kind of be left out. But I think the difference with this one is that there's a good chance that the pace of technological unemployment will outpace our ability to create new jobs like we have with past industrial revolutions. So where does that leave us? I think regardless of what I or anybody else does, we probably end up with like very low cost food and housing and things like that. But in this, the current trend would be that it's going to be like government sponsored dormitories eating, really, really low quality food and stuff like that. Like we'll have a place to live, but it's not going to be very pretty. So the idea, so I'm trying to pivot my company and turn it into a stakeholder cooperative to address and ideally end poverty and ecological destruction. And give the 99% an opportunity to have an ownership stake in this next industrial revolution. So the idea is to band together, pool our resources, and purchase these technologies that are going to be just transformative, and use them to produce high quality versions of basic human necessities, to drive the cost of those basic human necessities toward zero. Get them as cheap as we can, but still high quality. And doing that through a co-op means that the way we'll produce those things will not be like, so for instance, the iPhone, where we're forced, or not forced, but they try to push us towards upgrading every couple of years. We can't swap out the camera module. There's all kinds of conflict minerals in there mined by likely some level of child slave labor and really poor working conditions in the factories and things like that. If we owned Apple in a real way, I don't think any of that would be the case. I think the phones would be modular, they'd be upgradable, they'd be designed, they'd be easily repairable, designed to last a lifetime, and easily recyclable when that lifetime ultimately ends, and not use have the conflict minerals and all those other supply chain issues. So I think if we extend that to the other products and services that are necessary for us to live a comfortable life, we can, even without the technological innovation, I think we can drive the costs of those things down pretty significantly if we own the companies that are producing them, because you take away the incentive to for planned obsolescence and things like that. So you don't need to buy a new XYZ every few years. Even with no real innovation, you can significantly decrease the cost of living, I think, not to mention the material resource intensity. So yeah, the idea is basically like a co-op grocery store on steroids. Let's do that not only for grocery stores, but everything else that we need in our daily lives. So the strategic plan is to start with a solar farm. Not at all set in stone there. I've got a slide in the pitch deck with like a dozen other possible market entry points, but I think solar farm makes a lot of sense for a whole bunch of reasons. I think like 75% of the municipalities in San Diego County have signed on to a community choice energy platform. So they're largely going to be doing the procurement, negotiating the contracts to purchase electricity from the generators, as opposed to SDG&E doing that part of it. SDG&E also has made some comments to the state regulatory agencies that they want to get out of the generation side of things, or at least not be the quote unquote provider of last resort that the state requires. So they seem to be going towards doing more transmission and distribution, which I think is exactly where these large utilities can be their part in this, and leave the generation up to cooperatives, because of the distributed nature of renewables. I think that makes a lot of sense. Like for the previous industrial revolutions, it made some sense to centralize, have these big centralized power plants, but renewables are different. You're harvesting much smaller amounts of energy over much wider geographic areas. So it makes a lot of sense for co-ops to, locally owned co-ops to be doing that. Solar is also just such a beautiful form of automation. I don't think most people think of it that way, but they're basically electricity producing robots in a sense. Very few moving parts. They just produce electricity day after day as long as the sun keeps shining and you keep them clean. And the fact that electricity at utility scale is sold via 20-25 year power purchase agreements that are very well known to banks, I think makes solar another logical starting point. The banks know that revenue is going to be flowing in for the next 20 years. They know how much is going to be coming in. Those contracts then can be leveraged to, let's say, expand on that solar farm or build a second, or, get into the next vertical for the co-op. So I think there's a big opportunity with 3D printed housing. I think that might be a logical next market to enter. Of course, you're putting solar on all those houses. At that point, you're getting co-op members living in, you've housing is one of our major costs of living, if not the largest cost of living. So if you can decrease that, then you can really free people from kind of the like wage slavery system that they're trapped in. And the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission just released a new rule 2222 a couple months ago that makes it much easier to do microgrids and virtual aggregation of power. So if you have a neighborhood, like once people are going back into the office, at least to some extent, and those solar panels are kind of, because right now we're using that power a little bit more right at home, which is what you want to do. But when people are going back into the office, it's now much easier with this new rule to aggregate that the power from those solar panels from a neighborhood and create a virtual power plant. So I think that's interesting. And yeah, and so then if you could get to that point, I think you're kind of off to the races, which is a huge if. Like it's even building a solar farm is a massively risky proposition. I think we are making pretty good progress on it so far. With having spent basically no money, we kind of stole a project description from a similarly sized project and have just been using that as a template. And we collected a bunch of environmental impact reports from around the geographic area where we're planning to do this. And I think we can aggregate those to basically produce an EIR at much lower cost. Of course, you still are going to have to do some of the biological and cultural resources surveys, geotechnical surveys, all that other stuff, but you could at least get a very good start on the EIR. And we'd ideally go for a mitigated negative declaration saying that we're not going to have significant environmental impact. And actually, and then the idea would be to take the savings from doing that EIR more cheaply and put those towards ecological regeneration around the solar farm. I was playing around with the design of the farm the other day a little bit, and I think it doesn't seem to significantly increase the cost to not do it in a rectangular shape, especially with the technology provider we're looking at. So I was thinking maybe a semicircle like rising sun, and then you could have like plant trees and other vegetation as like rays coming out from the sun to make it look cool from for aerial imagery and stuff like that. And add a little like marketing branding kind of gimmick to it. But yeah, basically like look at the endangered species that are around there and actually like provide habitat for them, like build, plant the plants that they like to eat and build them like little nests and run some kind of like in situ breeding program, things like that to actually make the space better than it was before we found it. So yeah, I'm gonna stop there. I could keep talking forever, but so like the idea with this session was to talk about fundraising. Certainly want to talk about that, but happy for the conversation to go in kind of any direction. On the fundraising side of things, I think we're going to pretty much disqualify ourselves from most standard investors because the co-op model, basically requires that typically it's one worker, one vote. So this is a stakeholder cooperative. So it's not just workers, but yeah, one stakeholder, one vote. So an investor that invests, $1 million, they still only get one vote. And I think most investors are just not, that's going to be a total non-starter for them if they can't, buy control of the company. So looking at other, potential avenues to raise money, we're working on an equity crowdfunding campaign on WeFunder for the solar farm. So to ideally raise like $150,000 to $250,000 to pay for the engineering, the environmental impact studies, when to actually send somebody out to do a biological resources study and things like that. Yeah, thanks for posting a link to that, Isabel. and to pay for the engineering and construction documents. And then hopefully with all that in hand, we could, we've had some conversations with Mission Driven Finance, and they're interested. So like they said, that's kind of the point where they would come in when everything else is in place and you're trying to raise the 5 to 7 million to actually build the thing. You know, they'd be open to considering it at that point. There's the Renewable Energy for America REAP grant program that grants up to 500,000 and loans up to 25 million. So that's another potential avenue. And then there's all kinds of grant funding opportunities out there, from, small business innovation research grants, SBIRs, and, all kinds of other opportunities. It's just a matter of kind of deciding which one makes sense and then going for it. Just got keyed into an organization a couple days ago called Inspiralia that's, I guess, does grant applications, and they are, I'm told, good enough at it that if they feel it's a good opportunity, they'll write it on spec and just get paid out of, if the grant is awarded. So yeah, something like that is really interesting if we can provide a compelling case that this will be successful. You might be able to sell an organization like that to write the grant up front for free, and or even just low cost, and then get paid out of the award. And I think there probably are impact investors out there that might be maybe not interested in the big idea of like ending poverty and regenerating the local ecosystem and making basic human necessities free and all that stuff. Like, even they might be interested in that but not actually be willing to like put money toward it. I think a lot of people that would be the case, and that's reasonable. It's a big messy idea that's longer term and whatever. So the idea is to split off each discrete project, like the solar farm, 3D printed housing. Each of those will have its own entity. That's kind of how Mondragon in Spain has done it, which is another thing I'm basing a lot of this off of. Mondragon, for those that haven't heard of it, has got to be the world's most successful co-op. I don't know of anything else that even holds a candle to it. They've got 75,000 plus members. They're engaged in every major industry, from agriculture, manufacturing, retail, education, healthcare, you name it, they're doing it. But I don't, as far as I know, they don't have their eye on taking advantage of this next industrial revolution to really change things. They don't seem to be going after like eradication of poverty, and they don't seem to have an ecological side to it. I'm sure, I think part of that's probably they just don't market it. And they probably are doing a lot of that stuff. They're based in the Basque region of Spain, although they have operations all around the world. And I'm sure they've done a lot of regenerative stuff around the Basque region. They just, Europeans view that stuff as just being more like common sense and natural, and I think don't talk about it as much. But that's an assumption. Maybe they're not really doing that stuff. It's hard to say. But yeah, so I think there might be some investors that would be open to the solar farm idea, and other spin-off ideas like that. So yeah, I would love to hear people's thoughts, any ideas they have, and particularly, like, I have been looking for a fundraising specialist, like a person to really join us and handle this side of it. I like the pitching side of things, but the hustling after investors and stuff like that, like we were looking into the San Diego Angel Conference, and even if you don't get selected, there's an opportunity to network with the investors. And like, I don't know, I wouldn't mind doing that totally if I had somebody else with me. I just don't have the energy for it by myself. I want to really be engaged in the sustainability or regenerative system design. I've been running the business for 10 years and, doing the bookkeeping and all that other boring admin stuff. And I just would love to have some help on that front from somebody who really does get the vision.
So one quick question for you, Cody, because I know I've asked you this before, but this will help refine, kind of some of the problem solving around this. Is what is the amount of funding that we need to get going?
So I think 150 to 250K to get the solar farm project going is somewhere around there. But even like $50,000 would certainly help. I think it, depending on the amount that you get, what you spend it on could change pretty drastically. So like if you get 50, do you start doing the environmental impact surveys, or do you like not even start on that stuff and instead hire somebody really high quality to help raise more money, or something else? I don't know. So I think depending on the amount you raise, you might use it very differently. But I think a good sweet spot is like 150 to 250.
So we could definitely do that with crowdfunding, and there's multiple different crowdfunding platforms out there. Like I don't know very much about WeFunder, but I know there's some other ones out there, like Start Some Good does their own crowdfunding platform, and their model is all or nothing. So you have to clearly lay out like, what are your financial milestones? What does that mean? What are you going to spend it on? What's that going to accomplish?
Yeah.
And you can have multiple milestones, but know that if you don't meet at least your first milestone, you don't get any of that money. So everyone who's funding into it is further incentivized to know that if they're giving you money, and if they're actually going to, lose their money, or it's going into something, it's actually going to help you get to your first milestone. Whereas like other crowdfunding campaigns, it's like, maybe it's a black hole. I don't know if they're going to meet their goal. Like, like if we only raise like $2,000, obviously it's not going to really do a whole lot for us. So then they get the money back. So just some thoughts there.
Yeah, no, I think there are a lot of other platforms that we could potentially use. I'm open to anything. WeFunder has, even just over the last few months, they seem to have gone into the lead for equity crowdfunding platforms in terms of dollars raised. So Start Engine and Republic.co are a couple of the other main ones. And yeah, WeFunder just recently surpassed them in terms of amount raised. So it seems like a decent one, but that it's a good, I think they're all or nothing, but I could be wrong. I don't recall. I'll have to look into that.
I'm going to jump in for a sec, and I don't know if you know that New Leaf Biofuels got a $5 million grant a couple of years ago to expand their biodiesel plant. I'm not sure where they got it from, but I mean, 5 million is a pretty hefty amount of money, and they're a pretty small renewable startup type of a thing.
Cool. Yeah, I'll check that out and see where they were able to get that from. You said New Leaf Biofuel?
Yeah, that's them. The other thing I just wanted to say as a total aside, because the Mondragon came up, and I don't know if any one of you read science fiction, but Kim Stanley Robinson wrote a book called 2312, and the Mondragon cartel is a huge part of the story. So they exist for 300 years. It must be good.
Are they still benevolent at that point, or is it like a bad thing in the future?
I don't think that's a judgment you can make. It's not so much a matter of benevolence anymore at that point. The other thing I want to mention, you mentioned the shape of solar panels earlier. I know a company in Massachusetts that developed they're concave solar panels, so they're shaped like a half pipe almost, and they're made to track the sun using no actual energy. So it's the sun shining on the panels itself that causes them to rock from side to side as the sun moves from east to west,
like a sunflower.
Yeah, and it supposedly maximizes the efficiency of the panel at all times during the day.
Is it still a photovoltaic panel, or is that a concentrated solar technology?
They started with photovoltaic. I'm not sure what they're working on now.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, most of the concave ones I've seen are concentrated solar, where they're heating some kind of liquid to drive a turbine. But yeah, that'd be cool if they're doing a concave photovoltaic. We're looking at a company. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say they definitely were working on photovoltaic when I was living there, but that was like 10 years ago. I don't know what they're doing. I haven't kept up.
Yeah, so we're looking at a company called 5B out of Australia that has a rapid deployment solar system that I think is really interesting. So they incorporate concrete footers into the solar modules that are folded up and put on a semi truck, and then they just unload them with a forklift. And they say that a 2-man team can install a megawatt in a week, which is mind-bogglingly fast and requires no or much more minimal surface disturbance of the site. You're not drilling and pouring concrete footers, and you avoid all the civil engineering involved with that, the structural engineering of welding the racking systems on site, and yeah, all those costs you can avoid, and then the farms pack up much easier at end of life. So, but there's a lot of different systems out there that we could potentially go with.
I also have a plug for Boston. So I just moved to the San Diego area from Boston, and I have a good friend of mine who works for a company called Blue Wave Solar, and they do something very similar to what you're proposing, which is going out to sites and trying to create solar farms that are done in a sustainable and ecologically consistent way. So if you would like contacts with them, I'm more than happy to give them. There is also a company in Vermont called Be the Change, which is originally focusing on getting pollinators out into the industrial space. And they've started partnering with solar farms in order to increase the number of native plant species that are populating any individual solar farm. And I think that would go very well with the Tree San Diego idea, where you're having the right plant species in the right habitats. So I'm happy to connect you with them too if you're interested. But I also heard you mention just offhand that if the solar panels are clean, then they're good. And I've actually overseen a project back in college where some students tried to tackle the issue of snow on solar panels in the New Hampshire area. So similar but different set of challenges of cleaning snow off of a solar panel than cleaning dust. But I can imagine a world where there's a very specific ask of trying to improve the way that solar panels clean themselves or how other people clean solar panels. And in that case, the company that I work for, Goddard Technologies, would be very well poised to taking on a project like that. So I don't know if you're interested in specifically developing techniques for increasing the efficiency of solar panels, but that's something that we could look at as well.
Yeah, I'm open to anything. I think things like that, like doing innovation to improve processes, would come after you have a solar farm built and have that recurring revenue coming in, and the co-op is growing, and you're getting building the membership and stuff like that. That's when I imagine you'd start to be looking at those kind of things. But I think there's you could also do it the other way. You could totally start with coming up with some particular innovation and commercializing that and use that as the initial source of revenue. Yeah. So I'm open to it, and would love to be introduced to either of those companies you mentioned. They definitely sound interesting.
Have you heard of Inner Solar North America? It was a it was like a convention for the solar industry. I remember attending. Although it's more like a showcase. Have you heard of it before, Cody?
I don't think I have heard of that one. No.
I
But
posted on
if
the
if
chat.
you'd recommend it.
Yeah, I remember seeing there were many different types of solar industry. One was solar panels on the water. That's one infamous one. Then you have your, your solar. Then you have your solar cars. I remember that. Then I remember seeing a huge battery generator one. So yeah, that unfortunately is not. I'm not sure if it would be a reliable source of funding, but it might help with more with the design part of the solar farm if you haven't already.
Cool.
Mhm.
Appreciate it.
I was going to suggest, because you're talking about ecological land surveys and buying land and all that stuff. Have you considered working with people in San Diego region and just putting solar panels on their roofs? Like businesses, I mean, like rooftops that it's already there and it's just totally unused real estate.
It's totally another way to go about it. It's a much more competitive space. I think there's a lot of different installers out there now, and so what would our competitive advantage be? I think is a question. I think a co-op would inherently have some advantage. In theory, if the installers have equity, they're going to take a lot more pride in their work and things like that. I suspect the margins would be smaller, and you don't get that big contract that you can leverage, which is a big reason to start with solar. And then you also don't get any of the money from the electricity. Like, you're just getting paid to install, unless you're doing some kind of like solar lease program or whatever. But yeah, it's a much more crowded space and doesn't seem to have the advantages that doing a large solar farm would have.
Quick question, Cody. Have you? I know it's ahead, but have you got like grants for the land you might consider buying, or that's a step ahead of our the current issue you're facing right now?
So the plan right now is to lease land. We're looking at space near the Warner substation in the Warner Springs Basin, and the majority of the land there is owned by the Vista Irrigation District. So we've engaged with conversations with them about leasing. I think it'll be much more inexpensive to lease than to buy.
Lease.
So I guess for the crowdfunding campaign, what is kind of the challenge right now, or what's holding it back?
Really, all we need to launch is the pitch video. The financials, I think, could be improved a little bit as well, but the pitch video is the only component that is completely missing at the moment. Well, I think I do have a video in there. It's just one of 5B's 5B's videos, but yeah, that's the only thing holding us back. So I just sent them a message asking if we could use one of their videos in whole. I think that's a little bit suboptimal. It'd be better to just be able to use some of their footage incorporated into a video that we make, and just add a little bit of some co-op members, FaceTime explaining the idea, but then take advantage of because 5B has some really high quality, high production value videos, and so use them to make us look better. And so yeah, we've started a conversation to see if they're open to that. It sounds like they are, and so once we can, I think in January, hopefully, get some footage shot and get that hosted, and then we're basically ready to go. And then we'll do a little the way WeFunder works, which I think makes a lot of sense and sets up the participants for a higher chance of success. They have like a social proof process that you go through before you launch, where you send it out to people and get them to say if they like the idea and whether or not they would invest. And it kind of builds up a base for when you do launch. WeFunder then reaches out to all those folks and lets them know about the launch, and you have some like, you know, social media momentum before you even start. So that would be after we have the video up, we'd go through that process and then launch the campaign.
So is there like a process in WeFunder that when they fund it, they will get a co-op membership, or how does that work? I know there's some gray around that.
They just get a percentage of the money raised. I want to say they're at like 7%.
A funder would?
WeFunder would get the. Oh, you're saying people who invest, what would they get?
Yeah.
So I think you can set up the terms kind of in a variety of ways. So I think you'd probably, I don't know, I think it'd be up to the co-op, you know, just like all of this stuff, we'll put all of this up to kind of a vote and group decision-making process, what makes the most sense. But I think probably just a revenue share for the investors would make sense. Keep it pretty simple.
Yeah, you should check out Boston Ujima, which I think I sent you this week, but I don't know how they did it, but they're totally open to open sourcing and getting that in other communities. It's like part of what they do. But if you're unfamiliar, for everyone else in the call, Boston Ujima Project is like another cooperative in Boston that is really, they're more about supporting like blue collar workers and people of color. But it's the same, it's like one person gets one vote. If you're a person of color or a blue collar worker, you get more votes than someone else who's just giving money. And then really the purpose was to pool together resources from the community and then collectively vote on what to use that money to invest in, still in their community. And I just did a Google search of like Boston Ujima Fund, and like right now they're raising a fund and they're trying to get $5 million, and they have like a list of like, you know, the different types of investments you can do and what that means. But yeah, Cody, I would recommend you check them out. I probably know someone who knows someone there that we could talk to.
I totally, yeah, I looked on their website. They seem awesome. I added a few of the people on LinkedIn and stuff like that and sent a couple of messages. Yeah, it seems like they're doing some cool stuff.
Yeah, I feel like, you know, we could probably use their funding model.
A quick question. So does the electricity that's generated through a solar farm, would that be sold to the residents, like San Diego residents, and that's how you raise the revenue?
Yeah, exactly. There are a number of different off-takers for the electricity. So the CCAs, the community choice aggregators, would be one, and you could probably expect to get like 6 or 7 cents per kilowatt hour selling to them. There's another potential off-taker via the community shared solar program. So housing developers now, new homes all have to have solar in California, but you don't have to put the solar panels on the houses. Like, let's say you don't have good solar aspect, there's a mountain or something that kind of blocks the sun. The housing developer can purchase or negotiate a contract with a utility scale solar farm to purchase the same amount of power, so they don't have to put the panels on the roofs. And from those buyers, you can typically get like 8 to 10 cents a kilowatt hour. So that's like a very good price. So that would be ideal. And then in San Diego now, we've crossed the threshold where battery storage makes sense for solar. It's just like a no-brainer at this point. I'd be surprised if we see any new solar farms built that don't have a storage component. And that opens up a whole bunch of other revenue opportunities. You can get paid pretty significant amounts of money from the California Independent System Operator, CalISO, to just have the batteries on standby to for when they need them. You can do frequency regulation to maintain the 60 hertz frequency of the grid, so that people don't notice flickering in their light bulbs and things like that. You can store the solar power during the day and discharge it during the 4 to 9 p.m. peak period. There's a whole bunch of ancillary services that you can use batteries for. But yeah, all of the power would be used by within San Diego County by the residents and businesses that are here. So I also wanted to mention this.
Am I frozen or? No.
Yeah, you're coming through now, Branden.
Okay, nobody was talking, so I was wondering if I froze up.
We just had
or if it was just a moment of dead air.
Yeah, just dead air.
It was just silent? Okay.
Sometimes that's
I
okay.
just
Totally
wanted to
dead air.
say-
I'm sorry, I'm not a huge. I don't have
I
a
just wanted
sponsor
to say on
funding.
the subject of battery, my internet connection is not great, so I wasn't sure. Free storage. I mean, here in San Diego, we're fortunate to have the best battery storage capacity you can have, because we have an ocean, and if you pump seawater uphill or up into high level storage, it's a potential battery, right? You can just let them run downhill. It's not 100% if it does work. And if you desalinate the water along the way, you can also use it for irrigation and stuff like that. So water's potential energy batteries that run on water pumping before.
Yeah, you're breaking up a little bit. I think I got like 95% of that. I'm a huge fan of pumped hydro storage. It's still my understanding is it's still the most efficient form of energy storage. It's just the projects are massive infrastructure projects that are very, very expensive upfront costs typically. You could potentially do smaller. There was a company that was trying to do use water towers that really aren't used anymore in most municipalities that still have them. I haven't seen any in San Diego, but I think there's more on the East Coast, and use them for pumped hydro storage. Yeah, so I mean, that's definitely potential. It's just it's really, really expensive typically to get them started up. So yeah, I was thinking something a bit smaller, but that I would love to see that in San Diego. I think if you have the right geography for it, if there was a place that made sense, it'd be really cool to see that. I grew up in Montana, and they're planning a pumped hydro storage project there, and it's like $1 billion project. So they're really, really expensive, but yeah, still by far the most efficient is my understanding. Yeah.
Isabel's got a picture right behind her of a place to build a storage tank on top of Mount Soledad.
Mm-hmm.
This is from the Scripps Tower.
Yeah, pump the water up to the top of Mount Soledad. and let it come back down. I don't know how big of a storage tank you need, but that was what made me think of it, actually. This is Isabel's.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, okay, nice, yeah. I think, yeah, no, it's definitely something to consider because it is the most efficient. We were looking at flywheels for this solar farm because, you know, most places are using lithium ion batteries, but they are flammable. You need to have air conditioning to cool them. And you need these really expensive fire suppression systems. It's really difficult to get insurance for them. And then you have a hazardous waste to deal with at end of life. And so I think even if flywheels are a little bit less efficient, they might be a better option. We had, like, I'd heard of flywheels and knew that they were used, but didn't think they were really in the running. But we were talking to a guy from who's worked for Pacific Gas and Electric for a few decades and has done a lot of storage stuff. And he says that flywheels may be the way to go. So we're checking into that. But yeah.
So we're coming up
So
on the hour.
this runs through 1,
Yeah.
right? Okay, yeah. So before
yeah, I'm going to have to say goodbye because I got another call in 2 minutes. But this was really great.
Yeah, thanks for joining, Branden. And if for anyone that is interested in this, we're giving away free memberships in the co-op right now to try and build critical mass. So if anybody wants to join, yeah, there's no cost to do so right now.
Okay. How would I get hold of you?
So there's a sign up page on the website.
Oh, okay.
I'm, you know, also I can put my email in the chat here. And then the sign up is basically joining a Slack workspace. So I can also just post the invite to Slack here in the chat as well.
Awesome. Thank you.
At least maybe I can. My internet might not be up to the task.
Just posted the link to the sign up landing page.
Yeah, so that it's on there.
All right. So it's a quick question. It's kind of unrelated to the topic today, but I just saw like your on your website a picture of like Venus project, like Jack Fresco's like future city. I was curious, like if you are involved in that project at all, or are you just like their idea?
Yeah, I've been a fan of the Venus Project since like 2009, 2010. I went out to Venus, Florida and checked it out. I just had to see it for myself and met Jacques. Nice. Big fan of a lot of his ideas and the designs and things like that. He was completely unwilling to work within the current system to make his ideas a reality. And so the idea here with this co-op is to work within capitalism to make capitalism obsolete, at least for basic human necessities. You know, work within the current system, avoid all the politically contentious topics around wealth redistribution and communism or socialism. Like, I don't trust the government to solve these problems for us. I think we have to do it ourselves. And so I hope that this would lead one day to a society like what the Venus Project proposes, that if we can do this, if we can make basic human necessities free or near free, that humanity would do as Jacques suggested, declare all of the world's resources the common heritage of all the world's peoples. That's definitely still my goal.
Okay. Thank you for the presentation. It was really informative.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for
great to meet you
coming.
too.
You as well, Michelle.
Yeah, if anything, you maybe recruited some members.
Yeah.
Have you heard of landscape urbanism projects? You know, they're more architect focused though, because I was wondering if you were basing your idea of a solar farm, then trying to restore some animal habitats in the beginning. That's all I was thinking of. We're thinking of
Say the name of it one more time.
It's a it's more as a urban design architect thingy, but have you heard of landscape urbanism?
I haven't heard of landscape urbanism. I've heard of integrated urbanism, which I think was coined by a guy from Arup, which I really like kind of blending the built environment and the natural environment and having them harmoniously kind of coexist. Is a similar idea.
Yes. Yeah, technically it is the same, except that more artificial urban development is more focused towards the built environment itself, more trying to, it's more artificial urban design development adapting to the natural environment, but I think it's pretty much the same from the description.
Yeah, I'm definitely a fan of those kind of ideas. I think there's a lot of potential there. I mean, humans are going to continue to develop spaces. Like I think we can build, so like in the urban design space in academia, the idea of greenfield development is incredibly unpopular right now. So, developing in spaces that are currently, quote unquote natural. But I think if we develop in degraded landscapes like deserts, particularly deserts that are growing, we can build human settlements in a way that actually improve the surrounding environment. Humans don't have to make the places that they habitate worse. We can, the places that we live can be better as a result of us being there.
Do you think it's
Thanks,
more?
Isabel.
Yeah. Oh yeah. See you, Isabel.
Yeah, I also have to
leave it
jump. Thank
open.
you so much. It was a pleasure.
Bye.
Yeah, thanks, Robert. Great to meet you.
I sent you an email to connect about the solar folks in Boston and Vermont.
Perfect. Really appreciate it.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Cheers.
I think they also attended the Leader San Diego like last week or something.
Yeah, it was on the from the Bites and Bigwigs thing. Was it with the San Diego Foundation?
Something along the line, because I remember Isabel told me to connect to you because connect to you about more networking with you just to figure out how can I start my career, something along that line. But yeah,
sure. Yeah, I'd be happy to chat. I'm always anybody that is interested in the environmental kind of regenerative space.
Yes.
I'd love to help. So yeah, if you want to send me an email or reach out on LinkedIn or something like that.
Yeah, I'm going to reach out to you on LinkedIn.
Sure. You can also just I'll put one more link in the chat. It's like a Calendly system, so you can book a it's got my calendar in there, and you can book an open slot to chat, and be happy to talk about it. And anybody you see in my LinkedIn network that you want an introduction to, feel free to reach out about that. I'd be happy to make introductions and whatnot. So I think I got to run as well. I've got another meeting starting, but pleasure to meet you. Really appreciate joining in and giving your thoughts.
Of course, although even though I have a business entrepreneur minor, I don't really have the chance to practice too much.
Well, one other idea with the co-op is that it could be an entity that others, so if you have a business idea, as long as it's somewhat related to environmental sustainability and whatnot, and that you even just want to test out, that you could do it underneath the umbrella of the co-op. You'd have access to insurance and liability protection and administrative support and things like that, and wouldn't need to spend the additional money to incorporate your own legal entity. That you could just use ours, or at least to start, and then if it's successful and you want to spin it off as its own entity, that could be totally separate, great. Or make it a subsidiary entity, things like that. My hope is that it could be kind of an incubator for the members' ideas and passions and things like that.
You think it's a do you need? Oh yeah, you should save the conversation that that was on
Yeah.
Slack. Otherwise, it was good finally meeting you officially.
Yeah, no, you as well.
So yeah,
Thank you. Bye.
bye.